Hello, business building warrior. Welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. I'm your host today, Jim Cockrum. And if we've never met before, I got to tell you, it's an honor that you're going to spend a little bit of time with us today. And let me just get right into the topic and then I'll fill in a little background. So, what I want to discuss today is something that was prompted by an interview that I've heard. And I've actually heard this as a theme with a handful of people that I've heard online before, podcasts I listen to, that sort of thing, talking about the disservice we do, especially to young people, by telling them to follow their dreams, pursue their passions. If that's not delivered in a way that gives a lot of specificity to exactly what you mean, it can definitely be a misleading and I would argue borderline dangerous thing to do, to tell a kid to do that, or even an adult. Hey, pursue your passions. Because inherent in that message is a very selfish, self-centered message. And if you've listened to many episodes of this podcast, you know the foundation that we go on here goes back to a biblical standard. And I can defend the things when it comes, especially to business philosophy and your approach to life. I can defend scripturally the things that we get into, but it's a very mixed audience. There's plenty of people in our community, for example, plenty of people who have no interest in diving into the Bible. That's perfectly fine. Just know that that's the premise under the foundation under the arguments that I would make. So I'll be very clear, as clear as I possibly can be when it's Jim's opinion based on my experiences versus biblical standards and biblical truths that are demonstrated throughout the best-selling book in all of world history, which happens to be, and I could demonstrate this as fact, the greatest business guide ever written. That book says twice as much about money and business as it does love and prayer combined, for example, if you weren't aware. It's the blueprint for succeeding in all the important areas of life. But putting that aside for just a moment, let's go into our premise today. So, which is better? And this is the title of the episode today. Which is better, pursuing my passions and pursuing my dreams, or pursuing profits? Which is better? Interesting topic. And you may think you know where I'm going with this, but stick with me because I think I'm going to hopefully challenge some of your thought processes, or maybe if you kind of are already in alignment on some of these things, maybe sharpen up a little bit about where you stand on such a topic as this. Because let's talk about that word profit for just a moment. Profit, right? Not the prophet who tells you what the Bible has in store for us in the future, not that kind of profit. I'm talking about turning a dollar into $5 while making your customers happy. That's a business process. Profit, my definition, if you haven't heard me say it in a while, is the excess funds generated from business activity that allows me to continue serving with excellence without needing any donations from anyone because all my expenses are covered by the happy customers who are lined up saying, hey, thank you for the excellent service you're providing. So I can serve with excellence without needing donations. To me, that's the only difference between a business and a ministry. But that's possibly a topic for another time. So the business that I have, serving others with excellence, because why would I want to serve them with anything less than that? Why would a customer want to pay me for anything less than excellence? Well, now I've got a self-funded ministry. I've got a way to serve others with excellence, and I don't need donations. So when you look at profit through that light, which maybe you're not there yet, maybe you need a little work kind of thinking about that. Maybe you've been raised and you had the unfortunate experience of having teachers that taught you that profit is evil. Well, I would agree. Some people do some pretty evil things with the money that they trick people out of. But what if those customers are happy? What if those customers love your services? What if those customers, given the opportunity to get a refund, say a year later or 5 years later, would say, no, you're crazy. I would have paid more for that. I'm thrilled with the experience. Well, the biblical definition, the Hebrew tradition, if you will, where these principles come from. It's been used for thousands of years, by the way. I'm not making this stuff. You can read these kinds of things in the book I mentioned quite frequently on this show, Business Secrets from the Bible by my good friend, Rabbi Daniel Lappin. It's my understanding he's actually updating this book. Of course, he'll be the keynote speaker if you happen to hear this in time for the May 23rd through 25th, 2024 event that we have in Orlando, Florida. You can get videos of the event at theprovenconference.com. Get all the details if you missed it. But one of the things he talks about in that book is how difficult it is in our culture to think correctly about money and business because it's so under assault. The first question we have when someone succeeds in business, for example, is, well, how are you going to give back? implying that they've been taking something all along. And now it's time to give something back. When those of us who run businesses realize that there's very little time spent doing anything except giving. If you want to run a profitable business, you're giving constantly. You're sacrificing your own wants and needs and desires and resources today for hopefully a better, brighter future for yourself. But in the meantime, you're taking care of your customers. Even if that better future never materializes, you're taking care of your customers today and you're putting a lot of stuff at risk, giving constantly. And as happens, not the majority of the time, but the minority of the time, some businesses actually survive and do that well. Most businesses crash and burn and fail because turning a dollar into $2 with a long line of happy customers is not an easy thing to do. It's very difficult. And one of the premises behind the book that I wrote, the Silent Sales Machine book, is helping you discover the opportunities out there, regardless of your passions, regardless of how you'd like to be spending your time. There are some business opportunities that if you're committed and spend a little bit of time every day or a few hours a week, you can build a great business that fuels the rest of your hobbies, passions, the things you're interested in. Now you've got the resources to fuel those things. Because I'm not here to talk you out of pursuing your passions by any means. If you feel gifted and talented and called to do something, yeah, do it. But just because you're gifted and talented and called doesn't mean the money's going to be there. You got to serve others with excellence to get the money there. So let's get back to the premise of our show today. I'm going to talk around this topic and hopefully make some points in here that make some sense to you. But the premise today is it better to pursue your passions or is it better to pursue profits? Think about it. What argument would you make if you had 10 minutes to talk on this topic or maybe an hour in front of a group and say, okay, give us your best shot. Which is better, pursuing your passions or pursuing profit? Well, they're not apples to apples, obviously. And again, I'm not here to say don't pursue your passions. I think those desires that are placed in us, I love scriptures that say things like delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Meaning, if I'm pursuing God, those things that I want, those desires that I have been placed there by God. Those are the things he wants me to pursue. I'm not going to tell anyone not to pursue those things, but I'm going to say, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for those parts of the world you feel like God's calling you to? Those ministries that you feel like you should be supporting, those good causes that you want to put some time, effort, and energy into, and financial resources. All of us have bills to pay. All of us have responsibilities. I'm simply proposing, hey, before you spend your life trying to determine what is it that I'm passionate about, what do I like to do? I don't think that's a good starting point. That's my basic premise. I don't think that's the best starting point. I think the good starting point, and I think you'll have a hard time even scripturally finding anywhere in the Bible where it says, sit down and think long and hard about what you want to do with your life. What are you passionate about? What are you interested in? Now, yeah, we all have different gifts, absolutely. But those gifts can be applied equally in the business arena or in our day to day life. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the stuff that you happen to be interested in. Like for me, I've used this example many times. If I was to take seriously that advice that had I say as a 17, 18, 19-year-old, and someone come to me and say, hey, just pursue your passions, you're going to do great. Just pursue your passions, find a way to monetize it. The thought I would have had, being completely transparent here, is all right, I'm going to get as good as I can at basketball, and that's going to pay the bills. And I like to fish too. I like to sit on a bank, people leave me alone, fish several hours, a few times a week. I'm passionate about those two things. Sounds great. Let me build my life around that. Well, I'm a decent basketball player, but I'm not in that top fraction of 1% that could get paid to do it. I mean, it may have been some small European team that would have paid me a few $1,000 at the peak of my best of my skills, right? But certainly couldn't have built a career around it. I never had that chance. So imagine telling somebody who's, 6 inches shorter than me, pursue your passions, whether they're passionate about basketball and playing, and that's how they want to make a living. I think we tell a lot of young kids, and just think of this should ring true. We tell a lot of young kids, hey, pursue your passions. Well, okay, what if those are just hobbies? Yeah, enjoy your hobbies, do them with excellence, get good at it, but don't rely on that to make money the rest of your life. Instead of thinking what you want, how about we do this instead? How about we find needs in the marketplace? How about we find where there's a lot of people that want things and not enough people doing those things? Because the secret, this is a business concept. Again, Hebrews have understood this for thousands of years. It's all throughout the Bible. If you want to live a great life, you make it about others. That theme is in the Bible everywhere, literally hundreds of places. If you make your life about you getting what you want when you want it on your own terms, that's the path to misery. So why would we start there? What is it I want? Don't start there. Start instead, what is it that others need and how can I meet those needs? If you start there, now you're on an interesting journey. And the secret that a lot of people don't realize on this topic of passion versus profit, the secret is you're going to get very passionate very quickly about anything that you do in life that creates a line of people waiting to thank you. Think about it for a minute. Think of a long line of people. Just visualize it in your head, and they're all standing there, waiting in line patiently, taking their turns, coming up one at a time and saying, "Hey, thanks, man. That was great." Whatever it was that you did, it doesn't matter what it is. If you've got a long line of people, and I'm not talking about you pursuing your passion to get there. I'm thinking about even just some something that you consider borderline beneath you, something that you would consider like, how could you ever be passionate about that? You would become passionate about that thing if you had a long line of people waiting to say thank you. And in our community, again, thanks to my good friend Rabbi Daniel Lappin, for a long time, I've been calling money a thank you certificate, a certificate of appreciation. That's all it is. That's the only way that you can have more money tomorrow than you have today, is to serve other people with excellence. Unless, of course, you want to go out and rob banks and steal from old ladies when they're not looking out of their purse, right? You can definitely do some very immoral things to get money, but we're not suggesting that, of course. And I know that's not what you're interested in. You want to build great relationships. A transaction in Hebrew is the beginning of a mutually beneficial lifelong relationship. We want you to build stronger relationships as you have transactions. Hey, we'll get back to the show in just a moment, but I've got to thank today's sponsor, Forward Financial. It's been said that the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender, right? That's scriptural. Well, if you're in debt, how would you like to be debt free? Today, we're offering some services from Ford Financial completely free to you because for over 30 years, they've been helping people get debt free, secure your investments, build wealth. They provide a premium written plan at no cost to their clients that, if followed, will put you on the path with a date on the calendar, 5 to 7 years or so typically, where you'll be debt free. Your plan includes protecting your retirement money from drops in the stock market, guarding against inflation, building your wealth, and setting your end of life goals. For more information, you need to visit silentjimdotcom/freedom. That's silentjim.com/freedom. Talk to Forward Financial. Thank you guys for a great sponsorship of today's program. Let's get back to the discussion. You want to build great relationships. A transaction in Hebrew is the beginning of a mutually beneficial lifelong relationship. We want you to build stronger relationships as you have transactions. A lot of times people will say, well, is that a transactional thing you're doing here? Or is that a relational thing you're doing here? I'm like, in business, transactions are relational. Doing it right because the transaction's leading to a stronger relationship in the future. Again, a transaction is the beginning of a mutually beneficial lifelong relationship where both parties are better than when the relationship began over time as money and goods are exchanged. Both people are increasingly happier over time. That's what a transaction is supposed to be. It's the foundation of a relationship. So when you take it from that vantage point, you've got this long line of people waiting to say thank you with little green pieces of paper we call certificates of gratitude, or some people call it money. You're going to get very passionate very quickly about that thing. That's what we're not teaching our kids. That's what we're not understanding ourselves. That long line of people will make you very passionate about the service that you're providing. So let's jump now out of the arena of what am I passionate about? And we could have a list, everyone listening to this podcast today. Here's the things I'd like to do. When I have free time, here's the things I like to do. I like to write 17th century poetry. I like to study Roman history. I like to, you know, go play golf. Never be one of the top fraction of 1% players in the world. I'll never make a living doing it, but I have a lot of fun doing it. Instead of trying to figure out a way to monetize those things, how about we stop looking at what we want to do and we start looking at all the needs in the marketplace, all the unmet, untapped opportunity, and start serving people well there. And as they line up to say thank you, you're going to become passionate. See, those emotions will follow the actions. That's another biblical truth, by the way. It's all throughout the Bible. When God called someone to do something, he didn't say, I'm going to make you feel a certain way, and then you will go do the thing that I've said to do. No, it's go do it. And guess what's going to happen along the way? You're going to start feeling it. So, why do we start off looking for our passions? Passion's a feeling, it's an emotion. Start off with an action. The emotion will come later. Great thing to teach your kids, by the way. You don't feel like it? Well, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do what you would do if you did feel like it. My dad would counsel people sometimes in very desperate situations in their life. And you've heard them say this. It was actually a theme on one of our recent podcasts with Brian and Robin Joy. They were talking about do the one right next thing. So he'd talk to people in desperate situations and say, okay, let's pretend you felt great today. You don't. So we're not going to put a lot on you, but let's pretend you felt great. If you did, what's the one smallest thing you would do to step into the right direction? Well, that's not just trying to be encouraging to people. It's actually, he knew this principle, as do I, as do hopefully you after we talk today, if you hadn't heard it before. But when you take action, the emotion will come. You'll start feeling like it. Your feet hit the floor, you start feeling like getting up, not the other way around. Take action, the emotion will follow. So, what's the action you can take? The Silent Sales Machine book that I wrote, I don't get quite as philosophical as I'm getting on today's episode, but I think it'll help if you're kind of confused about and you've been trying to turn your passions into some kind of profitable operation. And I'm not trying to down talk anybody who teaches that. I'm just saying, I think there's an easier way to get where you're trying to go, especially if your passions are really hard to monetize and you're having trouble monetizing them and you've tried to monetize them and you think the best you'll ever do is to monetize the things you're passionate about. There's an easier way to get there. Find a need in the marketplace. And in the book, Silent Sales Machine, you can get it for free, by the way. Go to silentjim.com/free11. FREE and the number 11, 11. That's going to get you free. You can text to get a copy or you can email us. We'll send you a copy and go through it. You can listen to the audio. You can watch me on the screen like you are right now. And I talk through several chapters more in depth than I am now on this topic, but also some very specific business models. I unpack them a little bit more. We've identified three specific business models. Regardless of what you're passionate about, you can be very profitable building a great business. And then once you've got that line of people lining up to say thank you, giving you those little certificates of appreciation, you can, in your spare time, on the weekends, in the evenings, you can pursue your passions and maybe that'll turn into something beautiful. But in the meantime, how about we build a great business serving with excellence? That just might be something that becomes, as it has for me and for so many people in our community, the passion I feel about serving my customers, about teaching others at this point, about helping my clients. I'm more passionate about that than I am sitting on the bank fishing, me being the only one who's really feeling any sense of reward or playing basketball, even. Yeah, I love it. I enjoy it going on a long run. Hey, those are cool things. Those keep me healthy. Those are all good activities. But if I was bound and determined to find a way to make money from those things and thought those were the only things I could ever be passionate about, I'd be in a bad place. It's even been said many times. I've shared this before. I had a chance to speak in front of a class of graduating seniors, and I shared this. I said a lot of graduating ceremonies around the country. We're in the month of May, and there's a lot of people graduating, and there's a lot of guys standing up on stage and presenters and experts in their field, and uh, people that are called in to give the commencement speech, saying something like, "Hey, find something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life." Everyone claps and thinks that's just such a beautiful sentiment. Actually, it's tragically dangerous. It's borderline irresponsible. Because if you're telling a young person, just go find anything you love and do that. Well, why is anyone going to pay you for spending time doing stuff that you like doing? Unless you happen to be one of the best in the world, which very few of us can ever be that, it's probably some really tragic bad advice for the vast majority of people to go down that road. How about instead we say, use those gifts that God's planted inside of you? And this is what I shared with that graduating class when I had a chance to speak. Find those gifts, those talents you have inside of you, then go find a need you can meet in the marketplace. And you'll become very passionate when you see people lining up to say thank you. And that will become one of the greatest passions in your life is serving with excellence and that mutually beneficial arrangement called business. So that's what the book is about. A lot of it, not all of it. I dive into very specific business models as well, like I said. But if you're kind of stuck and confused, like, what works? I love helping people who say, okay, I'm ready to work. I'm not so self-oriented that it has to be something that I enjoy every aspect of from day one. Because here's the dirty little secret. Talk to anyone who's ever been in business and ask them this question. I challenge you, find anyone in business who's been successful for more than, say, 5 years. They've had a profitable business serving happy clients for more than 5 years. Try to find one of them who would say, yeah, I love every aspect of this business. I love everything about it. There's nothing about it that isn't challenging or mundane or boring or constantly testing me or trying my patience. They're going to have a list for you of the stuff they just don't want to do that's got to get done. And that list sits on their desk somewhere, and it's this little monster that they're always fighting. That's what life is like. You're not going to find that perfect scenario where, yep, I just wake up every day and do what I want to do. That doesn't happen for anyone ever at any level of achievement in any field. It doesn't happen relationally. It doesn't happen with your health. It doesn't happen with your friends. It doesn't happen with your business. In fact, one of the greatest secrets of success that's ever been shared with me is doing the things that need done when they need to be done, even when you don't feel like it. People who do that tend to come out way ahead in all the important areas of life. So if that's the reality we have to face, I mean, even if I'm sitting on a bank fishing, there's going to be days when it rains. There's going to be days when my poles are broken. There's going to be days, when I get injured playing basketball. There's going to be days when, you know, life's going to get in the way. So why not go after something where you're building a large list of people, a large group of people who say, hey, thanks, you're doing a great job. And they're paying you to do it, to become very passionate about it. Well, hopefully this topic is hitting home with you. And I'm not telling you, to be clear, not to pursue your passions. It's not what I said today. Some people are going to take that, even though I've said 3 or 4 times, that's not what I'm saying. There's going to be people that think that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that making money is better than anything else you'll ever do in the world. There's going to be people interpret that as what I said today, even though that's not what I said. But I am saying if it comes to profit versus pursuing your passion, you're going to be better off starting to look at what others want and need and how you can serve them with excellence. And that is going to inevitably lead to increased income in your life. That pursuit is more obvious to me of being virtuous and worthy of your time, effort, and energy than just trying to figure out what it is you're passionate about. Because that's a pretty small box you're crawling into when you're just trying to figure out what you're passionate about. So you can have what you want on your own terms, on your own time, and spend time doing what you want when you want to do it. That's a lot of you in there, isn't it? How about we say, what do others need? How can I serve them with excellence? I'll end with my version of a quote from a guy named Samuel Johnson. And I never say it exactly the same way he did. I modernize it up a little bit. This is Jim's version of a quote, and you can go look it up. But he basically says something like this: never is a man more virtuously engaged than when in the pursuit of profits in his own business. Like there's very few things you can do that are more virtuous than serving others with such excellence that they can't wait to say thank you for what it is you've provided them. And you know that they were grateful and not just saying it because they're willing to pay and create that starting point of a lifelong mutually beneficial relationship called a transaction. So the way you think about money in business is vital, especially if you want to be a business building warrior. So hopefully today I've helped correct some of those thoughts that you might be having, trying to discover what it is you're passionate about. How about we set that aside for a few months, knowing that we can carve out more time in our life to pursue that thing that we really enjoy if we figure out a way to build a growing, thriving, functioning business, better yet, multiple income streams that are all connected. And it just might happen to you the way it happens to so many of the people. Once that gets rolling, those other hobbies, you visit them from time to time, and sure, they still call to you, and sure, you're still interested in those things. But there's nothing greater than serving others. In fact, I once saw a story of a minister who was asked to write a one-word sermon. And his one-word sermon was others. So which is greater, passion or profit? Others. Which one can you pursue others more readily with? That's the direction you go. Which one involves you serving others at scale and pouring into the lives of others in a way that you know you're benefiting them and you have hard evidence that you're benefiting them. I would say pursuing a profitable business hits the nail on the head pretty much every single time. Whereas pursuing your passions, sometimes it does, quite often it doesn't. Sometimes it's just about you if you're being honest. So there's my answer. Feel free to send me your hate mail and feel free to push back. That's great. I love these discussions. Let me know if you want to hear more episodes like this. At the beginning of our podcast, 800 some episodes ago, it was just me having these kind of conversations with those who chose to listen. It was a much smaller audience back then. I haven't done it as much lately, but with the busy month of May upon us, our live event coming up, my schedule is so cram packed. We don't even have time to fit in interviews with people. People canceling. A couple people canceled on me this week. So I wanted to get an episode out after the conference. We always have just scores of great stories to tell because I spend my time at the conference quite often talking to some of our students that I haven't heard from in a while and saying, "Hey, we got to get you on the podcast. You've got a great story." So we're going to have many great stories as we get into July, August, September, heading towards Q4 of 2024. But hopefully you enjoyed just hanging out with me today and picked up some new good stuff. If you want to send me any questions or any pushback, hey, you can jump into our Facebook group. There's a link at silentjimdotcom. You can send me a direct email. There's a link to do that there as well. But if you would do us a small favor, share this show with others. Tell them, hey, you want to be encouraged? You want to build a real business online? You want to learn how to do multiple income streams the way thousands of others have? Here's a great resource for you. Just send them to silentjim.com. And if you haven't left us a review before on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you happen to listen, click the thumbs up, follow us, send us a 5-star review. We really appreciate those kinds of things when you do it. It means a lot. It helps us spread the word. So thanks when you do that. You're doing a great job of it, by the way. The show continues to do really, really well with tens of thousands of listeners every week. And we're just thrilled and honored to have you along for the ride. Well, God bless you, business building warrior. We're going to do this again very soon. Thanks for listening to Silent Sales Machine Radio. See you soon.